Folded by What's Up Shannon. Chapter 1. Eleanor. Flip's lips pursed against the filter of the cigarette as the tip crackled from the fire within. He exhaled, not just for the nicotine, but a need to release his frustration. The cloud of smoke floated before rising back into his face. His fingers scratched at his goatee as his tongue glided against his teeth in contemplation. Flip had been working overnight on a case. An elderly woman found dead in her home. She was black. He had visited the crime scene earlier that day and was now waiting on forensics for fingerprints they found on the lens of her glasses. Her fingerprints were ruled out. He had been sifting through the police report handled by the first responders. She was found slumped in her armchair. If it wasn't for the bloodied wound through her abdomen, they would have ruled it a heart attack or a stroke, the usual causes of death for someone her age. The details were non-existent. No sign of struggle or forced entry. It was unusual. This couldn't have been the fault of his guys. It almost seemed like the perfect crime. Flip kept the coffee maker hard at work, drinking cup after cup to avoid the back of his eyelids. The golden light had finally peeked over the horizon, filtering through the precinct blinds they had forgotten to close the night before. He stood from his desk chair, setting the police report aside. He figured the lab results may attest to more evidence he can ponder over. His limbs stretched to the ceiling as his eyes lingered back to the framed photo on his desk. Eleanor and Flip on their wedding day. Mrs. Zimmerman, her brown eyes framed by hair as dark as Flip's mane. She stood several inches shorter, showing a significant height difference. The sun had kissed her skin, which attested to her love of nature. Eleanor enjoyed gardening, vegetables and herbs always ready for picking. Eleanor's laugh would enter the room before she did, as Flip would follow her in with his usual quiet demeanor. They were obvious opposites, and yet it somehow worked. They had postponed their honeymoon because of his work schedule. It had weighed heavy on him to tell her, even if she took it with stride. She said she knew she was marrying a detective who saw the moon more than the sun, and loved him anyway. But he would make it up to her. Through his stubbornness and workaholism, she remained patient and understanding. The signal to relieve himself had been growing stronger by the hour, especially with half a gallon of fluids in his bladder. His shoes scuffed the carpet as he approached the restroom. As his palm touched the metal handle, the static he conducted released from his fingertips. "Ah, fuck," he said to himself, tugging at the handle. He stood at the urinal, cycling through the evidence still. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. A blade-like incision, made by an unknown weapon, had sliced through the back of the armchair she sat in and through her abdomen. A clean wound, steady hand. A single fingerprint was on the lens of her glasses. Her own prints were ruled out. He had them memorized. On replay. He rolled his eyes, forcing his zipper up before tapping the urinal handle. Ron Stallworth, his partner, waltzed in, lining up 2 urinals over. "Morning, Flip," Ron said, unzipping his pants. "How's your wife?" he asked, his head leaning back in relief as the sound of his stream echoed. "You ask me about my wife before me?" Flip questioned. Ron returned a challenging grin. "I like your wife," Ron tackled on. Flip scoffed in response. "I like my wife too," Flip mirrored. "Especially when you bring in her homemade sweets." Ron's eyes rolled back in reminiscence. "For a white woman, she knows how to cook," Ron admitted, wagging his finger at Flip. Flip returned a smirk, with knowing how good he's got it. "She's the best. I need to call her. Been here all night," Flip admitted, washing his hands at the nearby sink. "You what?" "Patrice would come here herself and kick my ass," Ron said with a laugh. But Flip knew he was serious. "Well, If Ellie wanted to kick my ass, she can wait until I get home, Flip mentioned sternly, shaking the droplets from his hands before reaching for a paper towel. Ron rezipped, flushing the urinal before joining Flip at the sink. I know. You've banned her from visiting her husband at work, Ron said with a hint of pushback. Am I overprotective? Flip asked, tossing the damp paper towel into the bin before leaning against the wall. Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, Ron said, washing his hands. There's always a target on us. Ron dried his hands, tossing his towel as Flip reached for the handle to exit. It was true. Flip glared at anyone who asked about his wife. He never mentioned her in passing, and even forbade her from stepping on the precinct grounds. Ellie never fought him about it. She could change his mind about what he should order at a restaurant, the route to take driving to a destination. He even let her pick out his flannel for him. She knew he was a stubborn man, and arguing with him regarding her safety was a losing game. Flip followed Ron out of the restroom, heading back to his desk to call Ellie. But something blocked his path. Ron's back. Flip grunted upon impact, staring straight into his afro. Flip leaned to the left, revealing the entire precinct staring at Flip's desk. Look, I'm working on that police report, Flip sputtered out, assuming he was setting the flow of the day behind. But everyone remained silent. No combative retort or a name to call him. They all just stared. Flip moved around Ron. He stepped closer to his desk, revealing an object. He couldn't name it upon first look, and that may have explained everyone's silence. An attempt to name what it was. What is it? Flip asked. His eyes squinted at the object. A folded piece of paper? Ron guessed, his feet approaching from behind. It was more than a folded piece of paper. This was intricate. Almost a piece of art. 3-dimensional, folded with precision and delicate measure. Who put this on my desk? Flip asked. It showed up in a small box in the mail, one of the other officers confirmed. There was a note inside, and all it said was, "For Flip." We didn't think much of it until we saw this thing, he explained. Flip parted through the other officers, sitting back into his chair. With delicate precision, his middle finger and thumb gently pinched the object, lifting it into the air. His fingertips confirmed it was, indeed, made of paper. Not printer paper, craft paper. Paper from a sketchbook, cool in temperature, smooth, for the most part. Not all sketchbook paper was embossed or beveled. This one wasn't. There were indentations, however. Markings? Ron asked, who now stood across from Flip's desk. Flip nodded, rotating the object in his hand. Some lines more subtle, some with more pressure, as Flip felt the ridges from the pen marks. Flip drew the item even closer, his nose almost brushing against it. Numbers, Flip mumbled. His lips curled in as his tongue licked them. The number placement didn't seem random. A digit sat along a fold, as another appeared just below the shadow of a crease. This is Ron said. Flip watched Ron's brows rise up in realization. Cipher, Flip finished with a nod. This is a cipher. Flip's attention broke, remembering the number of officers surrounding him. All right, let a man work, Ron shouted as the other men dispersed. Let me call my fucking wife, Flip said under his breath, lifting the phone from the receiver. His fingers pressed each number, dragging along the rotary, one by one, until he released on the last number. It began ringing. Ring. Flip exhaled, feeling the heat of his breath splash against his face. Ring. His other hand drummed his knee as his leg bounced. Ring. Flip had been able to time how many rings it usually took her to answer. 3 rings at most. Ring. As the 4th ring boomed in his ear, his stomach sank, his mind already creating an excuse for her. Somehow, Maybe she's still asleep? Ring. Maybe she's got the record player on and she can't hear it. Ring. Maybe she went to the store. But Ellie always went midday. Ring. His chest tightened. Ring. He heard the plastic exterior of the phone in his hand crack from his grip. Ring. His hand forcefully wiped the layer of sweat that now accumulated on his forehead. Ring after 10 rings. He slammed the phone onto the receiver. His body jolted from his seat, grabbing his coat from the nearby hanger. "Where are you going, man?" Ron asked, his arms out. "What's wrong?" "Home," Flip said, clipped, his pace quickening to the exit. "Hey, man, whoa, is everything okay?" Ron asked, attempting to catch up with Flip's larger and now quickened strides. "She didn't answer," Flip said, shoving the door open as the sun bathed him in heat. The sweat of stress that dampened his neck only amplified from the climate. Ron paused, connecting Flip's cryptic statement. Flip shoved his key into his car door, unlocking it. He swung it open. "Well, I'm going with you," Ron announced without asking for permission, already tugging at the passenger door. Flip leaned over, pulling the mechanism to unlock. Flip cranked the ignition as the car sparked with life. His hand was ready to switch gears as Ron opened the passenger door. "Then get in before my lead foot hits the gas!" Flip yelled with immediacy. Ron hopped in as a cloud of smoke built around Flip, burning the tires. The brake and gas both activated before Flip turned on his sirens and lights.